As the last remnants of daylight fade from the sky, the city of Old London begins to transform, its streets and alleys shrouded in a damp, impenetrable mist that rises from the Thames like a living entity. You would have heard the sound of foghorns echoing across the water, a mournful serenade that signals the arrival of the great cholera fogs, those infamous pea soupers that once brought the city to its knees. The year is 1853, and London is a city of contrasts, where the affluence of the wealthy elite stands in stark relief to the squalid poverty of the working class, all of them bound together by the omnipresent threat of disease. I always come back to this one, the way the fog seemed to seep into every pore of the city, a constant reminder of the dangers that lurked in every alleyway and courtyard. As the fog rolls over the Thames, it brings with it a sense of foreboding, a feeling that something is lurking just out of sight, waiting to pounce. The streets are narrow and winding, the gas lamps casting flickering shadows on the walls as the fog swirls around them, reducing visibility to just a few feet. It's a disorienting, claustrophobic feeling, as if the city itself is closing in around you, the fog a physical manifestation of the fear and uncertainty that grips the hearts of its inhabitants. The smell of coal, smoke, and sewage hangs heavy in the air, a noxious miasma that clings to everything it touches, a constant reminder of the city's inadequate sanitation and the ever-present threat of disease. As the night wears on, the fog grows thicker, a choking blanket that wraps itself around the city, suffocating all in its grasp. It's a time of great upheaval, the Industrial Revolution in full swing, and the city is struggling to cope with the influx of people pouring in from the countryside, all of them seeking work and a better life, but often finding only poverty and despair. The cholera fogs are a symptom of this larger problem, a manifestation of the city's inability to provide even the most basic necessities for its inhabitants, a failure that would ultimately claim thousands of lives and change the course of London's history forever. As the last wisps of sunlight faded from the London sky, a different kind of darkness began to settle, one that clung to every brick and stone, every alleyway and courtyard, like a damp, cold shroud. You would have heard the foghorns blowing their mournful tunes, a sound that seemed to come from all directions at once, as the Thames River itself appeared to be exhaling a noxious breath. I always come back to this one, the great cholera fogs of Old London, because there's something about the way the city's very fabric seemed to unravel in the face of that disease. It was as if the fog itself was a harbinger of death, a constant reminder that the line between life and death was perilously thin. In the winter of 1853, the fog rolled in like a funeral procession, shrouding the city in a damp, impenetrable mist that seemed to seep into every pore, every crevice, and every corner of London's sprawling landscape. The streets, once bustling with activity, grew quiet and still, the only sound the soft crunch of feet on the frozen pavement, or the occasional, mournful cry of a foghorn in the distance. As the nights drew in, the fog grew thicker, a chill, clammy mist that clung to every surface, making it hard to distinguish one building from another, one face from another. It was a time of great fear, of course, because people knew that the fog brought with it the specter of cholera, a disease that had already ravaged the city, leaving in its wake a trail of death and despair. The smell of smoke and coal hung heavy in the air, mingling with the stench of rotting garbage and human waste, a noxious odor that seemed to cling to every surface, every person. And yet, even in the midst of such terror, there was a strange, almost hypnotic beauty to the fog, a beauty that seemed to draw people in, even as it threatened to consume them. The gas lamps, few and far between, cast flickering shadows on the walls, making it seem as though the very spirits of the dead were dancing in the darkness. It was a time of great uncertainty, of course, but also a time of great fascination, a time when the boundaries between life and death seemed to blur, and the city itself became a vast, dark, and mysterious realm, full of hidden dangers and unseen terrors. As you drift deeper into the darkness of old London, the chill of the night air begins to seep into your bones, and the fog that shrouds the city seems to grow thicker, heavier, its dampness clinging to your skin like a damp shroud. It's a sensation that's hard to shake, this feeling of being enveloped by the very atmosphere itself, and I always come back to this one, the great cholera fogs, when I think of the city's troubled past. The year was 1853, and London was in the grip of a disease that seemed to spring from the very fog that wrapped around it, a disease that would claim thousands of lives and leave the city changed forever. The smell of decay hung over London, a constant reminder of the death and suffering that lurked in every alleyway and courtyard, the stench of rotting garbage, human waste, and death itself, a noxious cloud that clung to everything it touched. You would have heard the sound of coughing, the racking, wheezing cough that signaled the onset of cholera, a disease that seemed to strike without warning, its victims often dead within hours of the first symptoms appearing. The city's sewers, which had been designed to overflow into the Thames, had become a breeding ground for the disease, and the fog that rolled in off the river seemed to carry the very essence of the cholera with it, a deadly mist that seeped into every corner of the city. As the fog crept through the streets, it brought with it a sense of dread, a feeling that something was lurking just out of sight, waiting to strike, and the people of London huddled in their homes, praying for the dawn to come and the fog to lift. But the dawn brought no relief, only the knowledge that the fog would return again and again, each night a reminder of the terror that lurked in the darkness. And yet, even in the midst of such horror, there's a strange, somber beauty to the scene, a sense of a city suspended in time, its inhabitants trapped in a living nightmare from which they cannot awaken. The fog, the disease, the death, all seem to blend together, creating a sense of a city holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable, and the silence is almost palpable, a heavy, oppressive stillness that hangs over everything. As the sun sets over the sprawling metropolis of old London, a creeping fog begins to seep from the Thames, shrouding the city in a damp, impenetrable mist. You would have heard the sound of foghorns in the distance, their mournful cries echoing through the narrow streets and alleyways, a warning of the dangers that lurked within the swirling vapor. It's a sound that still sends shivers down my spine, and I always come back to this one, the great cholera fogs of old London, a time when the very air seemed to carry a deadly curse. The year is 1853, and the city is in the grip of a devastating cholera epidemic, one that would claim the lives of thousands and leave countless more to suffer in the darkness of their homes. The fog, a constant, oppressive presence, a reminder of the terror that awaited those who ventured out into its depths. As the fog rolls in, it brings with it a sense of disorientation, a feeling of being lost in a world that's been turned upside down, the familiar landmarks and thoroughfares obscured by the swirling mist. The gas lamps that line the streets cast flickering shadows on the walls, making it seem as though the very spirits of the dead are dancing in the darkness. It's a haunting, ethereal sight, one that's both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder of the fragility of life in a city that's been ravaged by disease and poverty. The smell of smoke and coal hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the stench of rotting garbage and human waste, a noxious miasma that clings to everything it touches, a constant reminder of the city's failings. As you walk through the fog-shrouded streets, the silence is oppressive, punctuated only by the sound of coughing and the occasional cry for help, a reminder that even in the midst of such beauty, there's a terrible cost to be paid. The fog seems to swallow everything in its path, leaving only the faintest hint of what lies beneath, a ghostly impression of a city that's been consumed by the very mist that's supposed to protect it. It's a strange, surreal world, one that's both fascinating and terrifying, a world that's been lost to the ages, but still whispers its secrets to those who are willing to listen. As the last wisps of sunlight faded from the soot-stained windows of old London, a different kind of darkness began to stir, one that seeped from the very pores of the city itself, like a chill that settles into the bones of a sleeping giant. You would have heard the distant clang of hammering on metal, the rhythmic thud of pumps, as the city's ancient waterworks struggled to keep pace with the demands of a growing metropolis, its inhabitants unaware of the horror that lurked in the shadows. The year was 1853, and the great stink of the Thames still lingered in the air, a noxious miasma that clung to everything it touched, a constant reminder of the city's festering underbelly. I always come back to this one, the way the city's troubles seem to converge like a perfect storm, as the Thames, that great artery of commerce and life, had become a conduit for something far more sinister. The fog, that most iconic of London's features, began to roll in, shrouding the city in a damp, impenetrable mist, as if the very heavens themselves were trying to conceal the truth. It was a time of great change and upheaval, as the city's population swelled, and the old ways of doing things were stretched to the breaking point. The streets, narrow and winding, seemed to twist and turn like a living thing, as if trying to shake off the weight of history that bore down upon them. And in the midst of it all, a terror crept, silent and unseen, as the first cases of cholera began to appear, like a whispered rumor that spread from door to door, leaving death and despair in its wake. As the nights drew in and the fog deepened, the city's inhabitants huddled in their homes, fearful of the darkness that lurked outside, the sound of coughing and groaning carrying on the wind, a mournful serenade that seemed to come from all directions at once. It was as if the city itself was sick, its ancient heartbeat slowed to a mournful dirge, as the pumps and pipes that supplied its lifeblood struggled to keep pace with the demands of a growing, dying metropolis. The smell of smoke and coal hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of the city's industrial heartbeat as the darkness closed in, like a shroud cast over the city's troubled soul. And in the midst of it all, the cholera fog waited, patient and unseen, its icy grip tightening around the city's throat, as the darkness pulsed with a life of its own. As the last wisps of daylight faded from the London sky, a somber hush would fall over the city, like a mournful veil gently settling upon its inhabitants. It was as if the very air itself grew heavier, thick with the weight of unspoken fears, and the soft glow of gas lamps only served to heighten the sense of foreboding that hung, like a miasma, over the streets. You would have heard the distant clang of hammering on metal, the murmur of hushed conversations, and the creaking of wooden signs in the gentle breeze, all blending together in a soothing melody that belied the terror that lurked beneath. I always come back to this one, the way the city's rhythm seemed to slow, as if it too were holding its breath, waiting for the darkness to deepen. In the winter months, a particularly pernicious phenomenon would occur, one that would wrap the city in a damp, impenetrable shroud, the great cholera fogs. These were no ordinary fogs, for they seemed to seep into every pore, every breath, carrying with them the seeds of a disease that would ravage the population, leaving in its wake a trail of suffering and death. The Thames, that great artery of the city, seemed to exhale a noxious miasma, a poisonous cloud that clung to the streets, to the buildings, and to the very skin of its inhabitants. It was as if the city itself were diseased, and the fog was merely a symptom of a far deeper malaise. As the nights drew in and the temperatures dropped, the fog would grow thicker, more menacing, until it seemed to have a life of its own. It would creep into the alleys, the courtyards, and the homes, bringing with it the chill of death and the stench of decay. And yet, even in the midst of such terror, there was a strange, hypnotic beauty to the fog, a beauty that seemed to draw one in, like a moth to a flame. It was a reminder that, even in the darkest of times, there is always a beauty to be found, a beauty that can be both captivating and terrifying. The fog would linger, a constant presence, a reminder of the disease that lurked in every breath, until the dawn broke and the city slowly began to stir. As the last wisps of daylight fade from the sky, the city of Old London would begin to transform, shrouded in a thick, impenetrable fog that seemed to seep from the very streets themselves, a noxious mist that clung to every surface, choking the life from all it touched. You would have heard the sound of foghorns echoing through the darkness, a mournful cry that seemed to warn of the dangers that lurked within the murky veil. I always come back to this one, the great cholera fogs of Old London, a period of time when the city was lost to sickness, its people struggling to survive in a world that seemed determined to consume them. The year was 1853, and the city was in the grip of a devastating cholera outbreak, one that would claim the lives of over 10,000 people, leaving countless more to suffer in a desperate bid to stay alive. The fog, a perpetual presence in the city, seemed to worsen the affliction, its cold, damp tendrils wrapping themselves around the lungs of the afflicted, squeezing the life from their bodies. It was as if the very fabric of the city itself was sick, the streets and alleys twisting and turning like a diseased labyrinth, leading the unwary deeper into the heart of the fog, further into the depths of despair. As the nights wore on, the fog would grow thicker, a palpable presence that seemed to have a life of its own, swirling and eddying through the streets like a malevolent entity, seeking out the weak and the vulnerable. The city's doctors and healers would struggle to cope with the sheer scale of the disaster, their medicines and treatments woefully inadequate in the face of such a relentless foe. And yet, even in the midst of such horror, there were those who would venture out into the fog, driven by a sense of duty, or perhaps simply a desire to escape the confines of their homes, to lose themselves in the swirling mist, if only for a little while. The city was a vast, dark, and foreboding place, full of hidden dangers and unseen terrors, and yet, it was also a place of strange, perverse beauty, a place where the boundaries between life and death seemed to blur and fade, like the fog itself, into nothingness. The darkness that settled over old London was a palpable thing, a heavy mist that clung to the streets and alleys like a damp shroud, and you would have heard the sound of foghorns blowing in the distance, a mournful cry that seemed to echo through the very fabric of the city. It was the winter of 1853, and a great cholera fog had come ashore, bringing with it the promise of sickness and death. I always come back to this one, the way the fog seemed to seep into every pore of the city, leaving no one untouched. The streets were narrow and winding, the gas lamps casting flickering shadows on the walls as people stumbled through the darkness, trying to find their way. The smell of coal smoke and damp earth hung in the air, a constant reminder of the fog's presence. As the fog rolled in, the city's inhabitants huddled in their homes, waiting for it to pass, but it seemed to have a life of its own, twisting and turning through the streets like a living thing. The sound of coughing and hacking could be heard from the tenements, the poor and vulnerable suffering the most as the disease spread its dark wings. It was a time of great fear and uncertainty, the medical community still struggling to understand the cause of the disease, and the people of London were left to suffer in the darkness. The fog seemed to last forever, a perpetual twilight that refused to lift, and the city was trapped in its grasp, unable to escape. But even in the midst of such darkness, there was a strange sort of beauty to the fog, a somber and quiet calm that seemed to settle over the city like a blanket. The fog muffled the sounds of the city, creating a sense of stillness and quiet, and for a moment, it was possible to forget the sickness and the death, to forget the fear that gripped the city. And as the fog slowly began to clear, the city was left to pick up the pieces, to mourn the dead, and to wonder at the mystery of the disease that had come ashore with the darkness. The memory of the great cholera fog would linger, a haunting reminder of the power of nature and the fragility of human life, a somber and quiet reflection on the darkness that had come to the city and the way it had touched the lives of all who lived there.